week on Disaffected, we'll check back in on a story we told you about last week about allegedly racist hiring practices that Bloomberg News got wrong and subsequently we got wrong too. Then we're going to talk to canceled Broadway veteran, singer and actor Clifton Duncan and ask him what New York artists are really like as people as compared to what he thought before his cancellation. And then we're going to wrap up by looking at the recent spate of murdered white Marxist social justice activists that happened this week by the very people that these activists claim are the real victims. This week on Disaffected. Welcome to Disaffected. I'm Joshua Slocum, and this is the show where we talk about politics, culture, and relationships through a psychological lens, brought to you from dystopian Burlington, Vermont. Got to do a little correction here. Bloomberg News got something wrong last week, and that means that I got something wrong. Our lead story last week, we told you about a Bloomberg News analysis that said that the S&P 100 companies created more than 300,000 jobs in the period of, I believe, 2021 to 2022. Bloomberg's analysis said that 94% of those newly created jobs went to people of color, and only 6% of those jobs went to white people. Well, the conservative outlet, the Daily Wire, got the numbers and reran them, and they say that Bloomberg got it badly wrong. Quote, Bloomberg, reaching for a way to isolate recent numbers, focused on the fact that companies increased their cumulative headcount by some 320,000 in 2021. Then they made a flawed leap of logic. They took the increase of minorities across the entire workforce and divided it by the new number of positions, not the number of actual hires. I'm not going to finish this quote. So Daily Wire claims that in reality, whites really got 46% of the new jobs, not only 6%. Basically, I recommend that you read the Daily Wire article, but basically, there weren't 300,000 new jobs. These allegedly new jobs were actually newly created positions that replaced positions within companies that already existed. So most of the, quote, new hires were people who already worked in the company. Now, this was an attractive story because it seemed to confirm something that I think is going on and that many people think is going on. And I think we're right. Companies are openly discriminating against white people, especially men. I've seen dozens of job ads in prominent places that are blatantly illegal that say whites need not apply. That is real. It is actually happening, and it is illegal. But 94% of them to people of color, I should have been more skeptical, as Bloomberg should have. So apologies, audience. Now, let's have a little fun. If you're a New Englander, you probably know that if you drive down to Massachusetts, if you go to New Bedford or Cape Cod, you can buy a ticket for an afternoon on a boat spotting whales. But for a staycation, try Walmart.
Drag me the fuck out! Drag me the fuck out! Drag me the fuck out!
For those of you listening, this is a scene from Walmart with a black woman who's being stopped for shoplifting. She's about to throw a fit. She just got up from her mobility device. Now she's throwing shit. She's gonna clean out them Reese's sticks now. Now she's being wrestled to the ground by a super hot cop.
Yes, ma'am.
She just called him white trash.
Damn, I love Walmart.
This guy's like, I love Walmart.
No! Walmart is racist! Walmart is racist! Walmart is racist!
In case you didn't hear it, Walmart is racist. I'm sorry, maybe we should have blurred that. Again, Walmart is racist. that
See,
it?
just one last one from the front. Let's get out of here.
It reminds me of when I was 4 years old and I used to irritate the shit out of my mother because I wasn't allowed to get up until a certain time on Saturdays. And I would bounce up and down on my bed like Reagan McNeil in The Exorcist going, "When can I get up? When can I get up?" It's the one time I don't blame her for beating me. All right. So how is this cluster B? Well, how is it not? This woman has a helping from each of the four categories. So we've got, let's go through them. Borderline, emotional instability, inability to control emotions. Narcissistic, she believes that she's entitled to free merchandise without punishment. Histrionic, that's too obvious, you don't need an explanation. Antisocial, or sociopath. This is a woman who lives a parasitic lifestyle of theft and shiftless laziness. This is your dumb sociopath, if we're to characterize her that way. You're seeing enough here to make a judgment. You don't need to, quote, know how she is at home, because you do know how she is at home. These behaviors are all what I call leading indicators when I think about cluster B. Normal range people never do things like this. On a bad day for a normal range person, it never goes this far. She's rational to believe that the cry of racism might have worked, and it might have. It didn't this time, but it might have. And look at the people all around her. They're all staring. It's the Roman Colosseum. Don't tell me that public executions would not be tolerated in this country. They absolutely would. We are exactly the same human beings as we ever were. People love this stuff. And you know what? It's normal. It's human. You're not a bad person if you can't take your eyes away from this. This is human. People are drawn to this stuff. Also, that cop was super fine. All right. Next in Cluster B, we are used to crazed eco-activists who will do things like throw soup at Van Gogh paintings, and they glue themselves to the pavement to the annoyance of morning commuters on highways. And we're so used to this. This has become so normalized now that ecological terrorists, yes, I said terrorists and I mean it, ecological terrorists get interviewed on television as if they were normal people who don't belong in prisons and don't belong in psychiatric hospitals. Take a look at this clip from UK television this week.
How worse does it have to get? How many kids have to die? How many more young people have to do this stuff? I don't know what else to say, Anna. Why aren't you on the streets with us? That's all I can say. How do you explain your inaction? How do you explain it? Everyone here, all the presenters that we talk to, how do you explain your inaction? How much longer are you going to keep this journalistic objectivity up? Until the water's lapping at your ankles? Until your own kids haven't got food? How long?
And for Just Stop Oil, what's next? Will you continue to disrupt events, or what's the plan?
Because it's morally wrong to not take the action that we know from history has got some chance of having an effect. People feel powerless. We are the opposite. When we come together, we have enormous power. There are so many more of us than there are of them.
Yeah. Did you catch that glint in her eye? We're going to talk about that in a second. We have so much power. That's what this is about. She says, are you going to keep on being objective? When are you going to stop trying to see the world as it is and give up to our emotional ideology? Are you going to keep going with facts? That's what this is about. Lying. Cluster B is lying. So that widening of her eyes, she goes, of course. Of course. She's getting a frisson, a little thrill. I've talked about this before. I've seen that exact look on my mother's face. At the moment, with these people, at the moment of their highest emotional arousal in any confrontational situation, when they're as stoked about their bullshit as they can possibly get, you will sometimes see that little, right? It's a shiver, it's a flash of it's a thrill. It's a special thrill. My mother, it would happen sometimes when my mother had literally backed me into a corner physically. And when she knew that I couldn't get away, I'd get a little of this. Right? To me, that looks like something in the neighborhood of sexual arousal. And if it's not actually sexual pleasure, it's a kind of lust. Even if it isn't directly physical, it's a kind of lust. A poison kind of lust. Some commentators online said this woman was brainwashed. They said, look what happens to these people when these evil activist organizations get a hold of them and brainwash them. And yes, of course, she is a cult member. She is a member of an organization that does brainwashing. That is true. But this woman is not an innocent victim. She's not a poor, emotionally unstable fawn. There are some of those. She is not one of them. She's not a victim. She's not a hysterical borderline or a gullible histrionic, although she is performing histrionics. She knows exactly what she's doing, and she does not feel the sad emotions that she's trying to pantomime on television. Did you see any tears? I don't know what else to say. I don't know what else to say. So you're going to try and fake cry. This looks more like psychopathic behavior to me than unstable borderline or histrionic behavior. Now, to come to the end of this segment here and go back to Canada. People were telling me online this week. I was complaining about some things in Vermont. Well, I'll give you an example. I've told you a lot about the declining social standards here, the exploding crime rate. I told you how the city is beginning to look like San Francisco. We now have human feces on our city buses, on sidewalks. We have syringes for drug use, littering sidewalks and grassways. And these are not just the rough parts of town. This is now happening in tidy middle-class neighborhoods and in pretty parts of downtown. Burlington is actually a very beautiful city. It's not as beautiful as Montpelier. Montpelier is the picture postcard version of Vermont, and I mean that quite literally. When I rolled into Vermont more than 20 years ago with a U-Haul truck, and I came out off the highway into Montpelier and I saw it, the first thought I said was, is this Disneyland, and did they just roll out Main Street USA Victoriana? Is this a set? Because it looks exactly like the postcards you've seen for New England and Vermont for the past 100 years. Burlington is almost that pretty, but not anymore. The rough spots are coming in. Yesterday, as I was coming in, the other day coming into the studio, there's a guy rollerblading through the University of Vermont campus, and he's stark bollocks naked, completely naked. This is now normal. Yes, I know some of you Vermonters listening are going to remind me that it is legal in Vermont to be naked. Get this, guys. Get this. This is the kind of state I live in. It's legal to walk around nude in Vermont if you leave your house nude. The only way that it's illegal is if you disrobe in front of other people. You have to leave your house already naked. This place is so fucking retarded. Yeah, so he's just rolling through naked. And you know what made it even more obscene? He has completely shaved his crotch and all of his body. Something about that made it even dirtier. It was disgusting. All right. So anyway, Vermont is lower Canada. But let's go to Canada. Canada has revealed itself to be a failed Western state. It's fully into failed state now. There is no democracy and no republic, no representative republic left in Canada at all. Yes, I understand it's part of the Commonwealth. I understand that it's tied to the monarchy. Got it, Canadians, okay? Justin Trudeau, the Prime Minister, and the government arrested truckers who protested the COVID shutdowns. They called them terrorists. They were quite successful in creating the perception among people watching mainstream media that these working class truckers who were saying enough is enough, we have to get to work, they were very successful in creating them as enemies that normal people looked at and wanted to spit on. They tried to take children away from the protesters. I don't know if they were successful, but they were very blatant about it. They said it right out in public. They didn't try to camouflage it. They actually said that they believed that these people should have their children taken from them. They debanked protesters. They shut down their bank accounts. Canadians, did you know that your government had the power to do these things? Before this happened, did you know that? Do you know it now? Have you really internalized it? Do you live with that every day? You should be. There should be no part of the day where you're not aware of this. It's not a dream. It's not something you can just put aside. You need to wake up faster than you are. Well, it doesn't stop there. We have seen pushback from a lot of Canadian citizens. A few weeks ago, we told you about the protests in almost a dozen Canadian cities. Thousands of people and families came out to say no to gender ideology, no to transgender indoctrination of children in public schools. For the first time, sane people outnumbered the lunatic counter-protesters. That was the amazing part. We showed you some of that coverage from Substack, from Eva Kurilova, from Matt Osborne, from the online publication The Distance. But Canadians, we need you. You need you, actually. You need you, Canadians. You need you to keep it up, and we need you to send your best and bravest right now, because it's not stopping, it's accelerating. This comes from the website thecountersignal.com. Yes, it's real. Yes, I've seen it confirmed on other media. Trudeau government moves to regulate podcasts. The Trudeau government's foray into podcast regulation is a concerning encroachment on free expression. Quote, the Trudeau government's recently passed Online Streaming Act is moving into its next phase of regulation by requiring podcasters to register with the Canadian Radio, Television and Telecommunications Commission, CRTC. The government claims the regulation will, quote, ensure online streaming services make meaningful contributions to Canadian and Indigenous content, end quote. First of all, may I point out the piss-poor illiterate grammar. That's not English. Streaming services will make meaningful contributions to Canadian and Indigenous content. Contributions to content? Don't you mean you goddamn idiots. You got that, Canadians? You don't get to have a voice now without the government monitoring it. You're a broadcaster now, and you better damn well service their Indigenous agenda. You better open everything with a fucking land acknowledgement. Ugh. I'll read you a little more. CRTC's announcement states that podcasters meeting certain criteria need to provide information about their activities in Canada. Online streaming services operating in Canada that offer audio or video content that generate $10 million or more in annual revenues must complete a registration form by November 28th. This is pitched as a one-time requirement collecting basic information. Sure, Jan. A one-time information collection, that's all. It's so easy. Why are you upset about something so easy? Aren't you blowing it out of proportion? The Toronto Sun's columnist Brian Lilly, who's done great work on this stuff, he had this to say, quote, the CRTC now wants to regulate podcasts. Here's my simple message to them. Go to hell. And then there's this, my favorite. Not a fucking chance, you sensorial scum rats. Dr. Jordan Peterson. I love harsh Jordan. Love it. We'll finish this up here. Quote, liberals say the bill will promote Canadian content over non-Canadian content. They also say it will achieve equitable representation among gender, ethnicity, and related marginalized groups. Next quote, in terms of diversity and inclusion, one of the goals of the bill is to put diverse and marginalized voices in the spotlight. If you put any more spotlights on these people, they're going to combust in front of the cameras. All right, time for a break, but we've got a treat for you coming up in the next block of this show. After the break, we are going to be joined by Broadway veteran singer and actor Clifton Duncan. He lost his career to the overreaction to the alleged pandemic, and he discovered that the New York arts scene is full of obedient, authoritarian foot soldiers and not the free creative spirits that he thought he knew. We'll see you after the break. Can't get enough of our love, baby? That's because you're not subscribed. Move that thumb over to the great big old subscribe button on your podcast app so you never miss an episode. We put out audio-only exclusive content that you won't get on any other video platform, so make sure you subscribe today. Looking for a non-woke place to put your money where your mouth is? Put it where my mouth is. Disaffected supporters get access to our private Discord chat server, backstage episode recording sessions, surprise guests, and more, and all it takes is $10 a month. You've got two options. Either Substack, visit us at disaffectedpod.substack.com, or go over to subscribestar.com/disaffected. Remember, choose the $10 level or higher for Discord access. Are you ready? We've got Broadway veteran singer and actor Clifton Duncan, who has sat down to talk with us for about 20 minutes about what it was like to get canceled and lose his career and how he sees the art scene in America, but particularly on Broadway, very differently than he did 3 or 4 years ago. And what you're about to hear, this is just 20 minutes, but Clifton and I sat down for some audio. So we've got an hour-long audio episode where we're going to continue this conversation that's coming out next week. Clifton, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me, Josh. Appreciate it.
Thank you for coming. So this is the first time you and I have talked to each other directly. We've talked to each other online a little bit over time, but that's the extent to which we've conversed. I wanted to have you on the show because I have been paying attention to what you've been writing and saying for a couple of years now, since what I refer to as the alleged pandemic. You don't have to accept that, but I'm disclosing that is how I refer to it. And you have really, you've talked about something that I'm not seeing a lot of other people talk about, which is what the pandemic, but not the pandemic, how our societal shift that happened, I think that got supercharged by the alleged pandemic, but that was happening already, how that has affected the arts and what has happened to you is, in my view, appalling. You're not the only one it's happened to, but you certainly have had some trenchant commentary on what COVID, so to speak, did to working artists. Can you give people just a little bit about who you are, where you've been, and what happened?
Yeah, sure. So thanks again. But so I'm a what they call a classically trained actor. I got my master's degree from New York University's graduate acting program, which is one of the top 3 conservatories in the country, the other 2 being Juilliard and the Yale School of Trauma, aka Yale. And I put the time in for just about a decade around the country, and then my agents begged me to stay in New York. So then I began to work in some acclaimed productions off Broadway. And then finally, 2017, made my Broadway debut in a play called The Play That Goes Wrong. And things began to take off from there, from Broadway television, some award recognition here and there, which was nice. So it seemed like all the work was paying off. And then 2020, the world kind of shut down. And at the beginning, I say that I was very much in the COVIDian cult, as I call it. And, I'm sending my friends all these statistics, and it was funny because while everyone else was paying attention to Donald Trump's first impeachment, I remember I spent about maybe 2 hours just roaming around Lower Manhattan one night. I mean, every CVS, every Duane Reade, every Walgreens I could find, trying to find face masks, and I eventually ended up having to order them. This was like maybe late January, early February. I ended up ordering a box of 50 surgical masks from Amazon for about $75. So they were already a rare commodity. They were already very hard to find. But at that point, it was like, yeah, man, masks aren't going to help you. It's just a flu, bra, yada, yada, yada. I was being mocked by people on the subway because it was like me and some middle-aged Dominican ladies. We were like the minority of people who were wearing masks and gloves on the subway. But then over time, everything shut down, and I just began to question things because, I had friends who would send me, there was one in particular, an op-ed by an eminent scientist named John Ioannidis, who is out at Stanford alongside Jay Bhattacharya and Scott Atlas, actually. And it was basically like, this might not be as bad as we're making it out to be. And I was annoyed at the time, but I kind of kept that door open. And over time, just, to kind of truncate things didn't really make sense. The policies didn't really make sense. It seemed like our numbers were going down, but yet the restrictions not only remained in some ways, but they were getting even worse. And then in late 2020, December, I actually came down with the virus. And, I lost my sense of taste for a few weeks. It was kind of weird, but it was pretty mild outside of that. But then in March of 2021 or thereabouts, maybe April, the industry-wide vaccine mandates came down. And even before then, I was getting emails from my former manager. Where obviously I got dropped. But these theaters were doing what's called availability checks or interest checks with we have projects coming up. Is your client interested and available in this particular play or movie or whatever it is? And they were already asking, are you or do you plan on being vaccinated against COVID? And at the time, I was like, look, I'll pay $100 that I don't have for a T cell test or whatever to show that I've recovered from this thing, but I'm not getting this fucking shot. I'm sorry. I don't know if you can
No, we are uncensored. You don't have to apologize.
Okay, good. But I'm just not getting this thing, and I have my own reasons. One being that we've never had a successful vaccine for any coronavirus ever, and that remains true.
Much less one that was developed from scratch and launched in under a year.
You know what I mean? And it's just, but the funny thing is, if you this is how inverted everything is, right? If you exercised caution and saying, I'm going to wait and see, or, I don't know about this, then you were labeled an extremist by the people who said we should shut down society and you should wear things over your face and you should be forced by the government or by your employer to inject this experimental, pharmaceutical agent into your system. So, but the entire industry just became, I like the word ensorcelled by this mania.
Yes, the magical spell.
Yeah, it was just a huge panic, and but the seeds were sort of obvious early on. I mean, our union, the Stage Actors Union, Actors Equity Association, sent out this email in March, and by the way, you have to you sort of have to acknowledge that the election of Donald Trump really broke these people. You could not go anywhere without people talking about how much they hated him and how, our country is being run by Putin. I mean, these people who call me conspiracy theorist, but they're saying that Russia has, stolen our election, basically. And so they're already brain damaged by what's going on. And then the George Floyd riots erupted. And then it was the pandemic. You know what I mean? All this stuff at the same time. It was insane. So these people's brains were already cooked by this time. There was no logic. I had a former friend who said, I don't even want any good news about COVID because of racial justice. So the union was talking about, we know that the old adage, the show must go on, is outdated and unjust.
I was going to ask you, give us some examples. This is amazing because you characterized this a few minutes ago as industry-wide vaccine mandates. I can't bring them to mind. I remember some of the specific examples I've seen you put on social media like Twitter. Some of the statements that I saw from people who appeared to run particular theaters or theater companies were just jaw-dropping to me. What happened? When did you know? Let me put it this way. Actually, let me back up even a little bit more. What part of the country? Where were you born and raised, Clifton?
Well, I'm an Army brat, so the easy answer to that question is Germany, Virginia, Belgium, and Virginia in that order.
Gotcha. Okay. How long have you lived in New York City?
I moved there in 2006 under the Bloomberg administration, and then I escaped in June of 2020.
Okay. And as somebody who was in the arts, I mean, I challenge me or push back if I get any of this wrong, of course, but here's how it looks to me. The arts, I don't think there's any dispute that the arts, particularly the arts in New York City, are entirely left. This is left side of the political spectrum. It's just, I think, absolutely uncontroversial. And of course, you probably know, I used to be on the left myself. I no longer consider myself a leftist. I was, as somebody outside the arts, shocked and surprised, and I think I probably was naive and I shouldn't have been as shocked and surprised. But I was. I thought of artists, particularly, if you'll excuse the cliche, bohemian, artistic, striving New York artists, et cetera, that these would be the people who tooted their own horn, went their own way, weren't going to fall into lockstep. And it very quickly became obvious that was not the case. For you, as a working artist and somebody who worked in New York, was this a surprise to you, or was it not?
Oh, it was shocking. It was absolutely shocking. And, myself, I mean, I still cling to the label of liberal, but I guess, and I don't like the term classical liberal because I feel like it's people saying that to excuse, they're really conservative, but they won't say liberal. I mean, I just feel like in my makeup, my constitution, that's just where I lean. However, it wasn't always this bad. It was definitely liberal, but it wasn't always. But I think after 2010 or so, and then exponentially so after about 2015, and again, particularly after Trump was elected, these ideas about, critical theory and postmodernism, hyper-Marxism, if you want to say that, say that much, it just skyrocketed. And so by the time, and I've been thinking about this a lot lately, because also I think what didn't exist decades ago is that now you have every year there's a new fresh batch of newly minted, BFA students, MFA students who've gone to college, they've majored in, acting or design or directing or writing. Mm-hmm. And so what's happened now is like you have people who have endured 16 years, or if they're in an MFA program, 19 years almost of left-wing indoctrination. They have no idea that there's another way to look at the world. They have no idea that they don't even know what they don't know. And so, and as the generations go on, they're more and more radicalized and they're more and more authoritarian from a left-wing perspective. And they watch MSNBC, they read the New York Times, they watch CNN, they don't visit any other media or they don't even engage with any other ideas outside of what they think they know. And so the point that I'm getting at is that there was some interesting Pew data that came out a few years ago about who the progressive left really is. And it's about 68% white, 48% college educated. So you have the sort of mores and the worldview of this, I call them the bourgeoisie now.
Nice.
Which have infested. I love it. It's not mine. I call it the blue bourgeoisie, but then a person named Randall Block conflated the two terms into a bourgeoisie. But so now the sort of worldview, the social vision of the bourgeoisie is what dominates the industry now. It's no longer, maybe working class or sort of scrappy professionals. Now it's people who are part of this affluent society, and they want to maintain that, and those are the views that they espouse. And so that particular worldview is moving further and further away from the rest of the country, which is more moderate, or they're more liberal, not very liberal, or they're more conservative, and they have no idea about that because they're in an echo chamber.
Yeah, and I used to be in that echo chamber, so most of the stuff that I talk about and criticize on this show was true of me. I mean, I've seen this from the inside. I was a true believer. You probably know this show has a hypothesis, and the way we see things is that our society is now structured along what cluster B rules. And what I mean by that, of course, is cluster B personality traits, narcissism, emotional instability, histrionic expression of emotions, falsely creating yourself to have the image of a victim so that people will allow you to get away with bad behavior and you can victimize other people. It's a large series of reversals. Black is white, good is bad, bitter is sweet, all of these things. And it brings up the question. We're not going to solve this in one conversation, but you said a moment ago, I still cling to the idea of liberal, right? What does that mean? And that's sort of a general question for all of us. I think we all should think about that and have an answer for it. But given that there's so much realignment of what used to be left-wing positions are now considered right-wing positions. Positions that I would have considered right-wing and conservative now seem absolutely uncontroversial to me in some cases. What, for Clifton Duncan, what does a liberal mean in your perfect world?
Yeah, it's tough, isn't it? Because, if you ask me, I mean, liberty, the base word of liberal, as much freedom as we can allow, freedom from government, freedom from social pressure, as long as we're not hurting other people. And and this extends to me, the idea of even sexual freedom, or the freedom to love who you love, these kinds of things. But even in an economic sense, as free, the more that people are free to choose what they want to buy or what they want to sell, these kinds of things, So I just
Are
think
you
of
a
liberty.
capitalist, Clifton? Are you saying that
I know.
capitalism is
Oh,
okay?
oh my God, Josh, it's so bad. But
Like,
that's
I
the
can't
thing.
even believe what I'm hearing.
But it's ridiculous because, and I go back to the industry, right? Narcissism. I recently spoke to Dr. Drew about this, who was very uniquely placed, because of his proximity to Hollywood and
Yes.
his interactions with celebrities over the years. So we were talking about, this pursuit of fame. You're already talking about an industry which attracts people who have a hole inside of them, and they have a need to fill that hole with, these ideas of I'm famous or I'm cool, I'm popular, whatever it is.
Yes.
And I guess I've always been an outlier because I've never been motivated by that. But
But you've been
I also
around it. You've been around it your whole career. I mean, I assume that even before you came to your current ideas, like for example, when I talk about Hollywood, and I use Hollywood expansively, I mean I don't just mean Hollywood itself, the city in California. I mean the entertainment world at that level. I think of Hollywood as a graveyard for personalities. I think of it as a place that people. Yeah, I know it's not. I know. Yeah, it's clever, but I mean it seriously. You entertainment by its nature, I think this has always been this way, is going to have a much higher percentage of people with some combination of profound insecurities, right? A lot of talent that maybe they use the wrong way or don't quite know how to use the right way. This is not an industry for. This is an industry that's going to attract very emotional people, sometimes very emotionally unstable people, some desperately talented people, but who cannot keep themselves together. That didn't just happen with COVID. I'm sure you've seen that,
right.
in your career.
Well, here's the thing, and I have a few responses to that. One, there's a great story that the great Sir Laurence Olivier, one of the most celebrated actors of the 20th century, was doing a film called Marathon Man with Dustin Hoffman. And Dustin Hoffman relates this story where they were eating lunch one day, and Dustin was just like, Larry, and Dustin is notoriously neurotic in his approach to his characters. And, a lot of us, we beat ourselves up as actors. And part of it is the sort of insecurity you're talking about, because we're on stage, we're being looked at. We're there to be looked at. And, but Dustin, he goes, Larry, why do we do it? Just why do we do it? And apparently in the middle of this restaurant, the great Laurence Olivier gets up and leans over the table and just goes, look at me, 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 look at me. And so the idea is, and there's another great story about Warren Beatty, who I think is someone who really sort of owned the fact that there is a lot of vanity and narcissism in what we do. He's like, my greatest shots are from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. That's when I look my best. And that's when we're shooting my close-ups. And so he sort of owned that. And I own it as well. You look at the old acting books, right? The sort of classic treatises. And they say, look, work on your body. Why? Because people are paying to look at you. You're being
That is true.
looked at.
That is
You
true.
know what I mean? And that's a part of it. And I mean, I have my own abandonment issues, these kinds of things. But there's a difference, however. You have to have a responsibility for yourself. There's a difference between wanting to be seen and needing to be seen. When I'm working on stage or on camera, that's when I want to be seen. But after the show is done, I want to disappear into the anonymity of the city and the subway and my job is done. And, and on top of that, you talk about the emotionality. Yes, that's part of the difficulty, isn't it? Because we're, as actors, as artists, we're highly emotional, open vessels. That's part of our job. However, Your responsibility as a craftsperson is to be able to marshal that openness and use it as a weapon in service of your craft. It's not an excuse to to slop all over everything and to be this sort of live nerve. You have to be able to control these sorts of things. This is why I always advocate for mental health. You have to be in touch with yourself. You have to know what your wounds are, but you can't use that as an excuse to, I guess, aggress upon or emotionally blackmail other people. They are, that is your gold. That's your gold mine as an artist to be able to use. I mean, I'm reading Othello right now. It's such a brilliantly emotional play, such a wonderfully well constructed play. There's so much sadness. There's so much. There's love. There's betrayal. There's all this stuff in there, and you have to know as an artist, as a mature artist, as someone with technique and craft, what those triggers are for you, and you use them in service of the character. But in your life, be a human being. You know what I mean? And that's what the technique is about. And people just don't, we have a very coddled generation, especially of Zoomers, and they don't get that.
Yes.
And, and I think your hypothesis is very, very accurate. And unfortunately, there's just a lot of people, especially in the entertainment industry, in the arts industries, which who have been allowed to, because older actors from older generations, they don't play that. They don't. Behind closed doors, they will complain about this kind of stuff, but they don't have the courage to really push back against it. They can see what's happening as well.
Who can these days? Because you get canceled for everything. Of course, you and I are going to go into more detail and during the extended audio conversation that we're going to have. Folks who are watching this show or listening to this is kind of a teaser for a longer conversation that Clifton and I have on audio. We can dive into this a little bit more. But as we come up to the end here, tell people where they can find you. What are you doing now, and where's the best place to look for you online?
Sure. So you can find me on Twitter at Clifton A. Duncan. I also have a burgeoning YouTube channel. It's Clifton Duncan, my first and last name. I also have a podcast called the Clifton Duncan Podcast. I've made all this easy to remember. And lastly but not least, I've really been enjoying writing lately. So I have a Substack, although everyone has one now. So sorry for the extra emails. But it's called the State of the Arts. I'm working on a piece right now about how progressives have killed the arts, or the theater specifically, and how no one's going to do anything about it. So I would love it if you join there. I'm also verified on Rumble, and I have a locals channel as well, which I'm going to be building up soon. So lots of stuff happening. I'm really committed to the whole content creation side of things, because I can't work as an actor anymore. So that's the bluntness, the blunt truth about it.
Yeah, well, you're speaking for a lot of people. Clifton, thanks very much. And audience, we'll see you on the other side. Can't get enough of our love, baby? That's because you're not subscribed. Move that thumb over to the great big old subscribe button on your podcast app so you never miss an episode. We put out audio-only exclusive content that you won't get on any other video platform, so make sure you subscribe today. Looking for a non-woke place to put your money where your mouth is? Put it where my mouth is. Disaffected supporters get access to our private Discord chat server, backstage episode recording sessions, surprise guests, and more, and all it takes is $10 a month. You've got two options. Either Substack, visit us at disaffectedpod.substack.com, or go over to subscribestar.com/disaffected. Remember, choose the $10 level or higher for Discord access. "15 to 20 years ago, I went to Memphis to give a talk professionally. There were a group of women hosting me, nice white Southern ladies. They were hosting me and ferrying me around town, taking me to get, things I needed at the store, toiletries, a little driving tour of the city. They needed gas in the car, and we were going by gas stations, and they decided to skip a particular gas station in the black part of town that we were driving through. The parking lot was filled with Cadillacs with gold wheels, men with do-rags and gold teeth, and screeching baby mamas who started yelling before they even got into the store. That was the scene. This is very typical in these parts of town. They didn't want to stop there. They said, this is not a great part of town. We're not going to get gas here. I said nothing, of course, but in my mind, I was making fun of them. Remember, this is me from 15 or 20 years ago, not me today. I thought of them as silly, racist white women. What are they scared of? They're just assuming that there's something rough or dangerous about this place just because they're black people, and that's how Southerners are. That's what I told myself. That version of me reminds me of this woman that we showed you last week, and we're going to show you again right now.
Seattle decriminalized drug use, and then they criminalized it again.
Oh my God, who are you getting these facts from? You're from New York. Apparently you're listening to the wrong people.
I saw people shooting up on my way down here.
Oh, did you? Okay. And they were bothering you?
I was in a car, but, people...
Oh, no, you're in a car. Oh, no, they were hurting you so bad. Oh, no.
I don't know about you, but every time I watch that, I get angrier at her. I'm not going to do it myself, but I would not cry any tears if someone walked up and backhanded her. I carried that same stupid attitude with me that I used with my hosts in Memphis and that this stupid bitch from Seattle has. I carried it with me when I traveled a couple of years later to give a talk in Detroit. And the night before my talk, I'm staying in a hotel. I've never been to Detroit before. I decided that I wanted some booze and some gay male company. Of course, I had already pre-gamed, so when I left my hotel on foot, I was already drunk. And I walked into the only gay bar that I could find in that part of town, which was, well, I mean, what part of Detroit isn't the black part of town? But this was a really rough part of town. I walked in. It was a gay bar full of men, and I was the only white boy in there. Only one. A smooth-talking man sat down with me and flattered me, which worked really, really well. Bought me enough drinks that I got myself pickled and accompanied me back to my hotel for a nightcap. He turned out to be a prostitute. And I didn't know this. This is how naive I was. When I wouldn't pay him, he started strangling me. I managed to get him off me and out of my hotel room door, but I'm lucky that I'm not dead. And I thought it was just fine to walk anywhere I wanted, and it would be utterly racist to think that there was any danger to me in an all-black bar in one of the roughest parts of town, being a white boy who was 28 years old. I learned my lesson, didn't I? That would have been the wages of my stupidity. Had I been seriously hurt, I would have been responsible for walking into that situation. And as we showed you last week, Pava Marie Lepere carried this attitude as well. She is the 26-year-old tech CEO who worked as an anti-racist and said things like, we need to stop criminalizing black bodies. She was found murdered last week on the rooftop of her secure apartment building. And the suspect is this gentleman, Mr. Jason Dean Billingsley. Is that right? Yeah, Jason Dean Billingsley. These are his mugshots you're seeing. The first one's from 2011. He was arrested. What was he arrested and in prison for in 2011? Assault. Then in 2013, he was also arrested and sentenced to prison for what? Attempted rape. But he was released early for good behavior. Good behavior. Now he's charged with murdering Lepere. By the way, she let him into that secure building because he said he lost his key. So she was like, okay, I guess I'll let him in. And then she rode an elevator alone with him up to her floor, and he beat her and killed her. Woke is cluster B, is cluster B, is woke. Woke has been telling us for years not to notice things. It's been telling us that our intuitions about danger are bigotry. It's told us that we can't judge human books by their covers. We are explicitly told everywhere in this culture to shut down our senses, stop detecting danger, and to morally berate ourselves for making intuition judgments based on what we can see. And definitely, don't pick up on danger signals and do not ever try to make a pattern in your head. That will make you a bigoted racist. Worse, woke has trained us to give ourselves a dopamine boost. that feels good when we deny our intuitions. When we tamp it down, we feel good about ourselves. When we rise above them and walk into the danger, we tell ourselves what good people we are, what enlightened people we are. This appears to be a motivation for the behavior of a man that you're going to see in this next video. This is video that shows the stabbing murder of Ryan Carson in New York City. Don't worry, you don't actually see the stabbing itself. It's been cut out. It happens in the video edit. Edit. Yeah, that too. Take a look. For those of you just listening, this is a street in Manhattan. It's 4 a.m. Ryan Carson is looks to be about 30. He's with his girlfriend. He's following a guy who walked by in a hoodie who looks very sketchy. They're just following him. Now the guy is kicking trash cans and vehicles. Ryan is approaching him, affirmatively approaching him. He's saying, "I'll kill you." Ryan's saying, "Chill, chill." Now he's been stabbed. He's dying.
I'm so sorry. Are you doing? Go watch him. Go watch him. I'm so Ryan. No, Ryan.
Okay, the first thing I'm going to talk about here is what I perceive to be the incredibly strange behavior of his girlfriend. No. Shock does not sufficiently explain this for me. I already hear the objection. I've already been told the objection. No, I do not believe that shock explains her behavior. It is possible, but on balance, no, I don't believe that. Yes, I know that people react differently in extreme situations. Yes, I also understand fight, flight, or freeze. I have taken these into account. I don't need to be reminded to think of these things. I'm saying I have already taken them into account, and I still judge her behavior to be strange. Something is very wrong with her reaction. I detect a distinct lack of fear and a distinct lack of emotional impact from seeing her boyfriend murdered. He's bleeding out on the street. Do I know for sure that there's something wrong with her? No, I don't know that for sure. But yes, something is very off here with this woman, and that's not explained away. I don't know what to tell you. But let's go through everything that Ryan did wrong here. Ryan was carrying with him the same kinds of attitudes, but more extreme, that got me into trouble on my trips. So he was on the street with his woman at 4 a.m. in New York City without a gun, with no means of protecting himself. That was mistake number one. A sketchy guy walks by. I'm sorry. No, I'm not sorry. We're going to tell it straight like it is. A young black man of about 18 or 19 with a hoodie pulled up over his head, it's not cold outside, walking by, is somebody I would cross the street to get away from. Yes, and all of you know it. Even if you hate listening to this, you know it. They didn't cross the street. Not only did Ryan and his girlfriend not cross the street, they followed the sketchy guy on the same side of the street. They walked toward him. Then, sketchy guy started kicking trash cans. He was clearly indicating, I am violent and I am getting more violent while you watch me. Then it appears that he's either trying to kick in the window of a car, perhaps it's a motorcycle, it's hard to see. Ryan continues to walk up to this man while he is kicking and trying to break glass. Ryan chose to walk up to him. What did he think he was going to do? Help him? He made himself the target. He chose to do this. He ignored every danger signal and warning flag that would have gone off in his gut if he had not trained himself and been trained by his woke friends to believe that normal human danger intuition makes you racist. He pushed it all down. He endangered his girlfriend and himself by doing this. The minute that kid walked by, he should have grabbed her by the arm and escorted her across the street and walked in the opposite direction, like any fool knows to do. Ryan Carson, of course, was a big old lefty social justice activist naturally. He looked as you would expect him to look. Can we put his picture up there, Kevin? Big smile. Big toothy smile with Harry Potter glasses. Hi! Hi! I'm Ryan. I'm friendly. Very friendly. No, don't tell me it's just one picture. I've seen a bunch of them. Let's take a look at another one. Here's Ryan. Oh, isn't that cute? He's sitting cross-legged with his big toothy grin with a shirt that says, "Have heart." You know, he's on the dock. He's on a dock in front of a little lake or a pond. Isn't that sweet? Doesn't he just ooze love and caring for everybody? Have heart. You don't have one now because that man put a dagger literally in your heart. Look at the good you do. Ryan Carson wanted everyone to know the good he did. That's why he plastered it all over social media. He also wanted everyone to know all the bad that those crazy, stupid, jacked up, bigoted conservatives were doing. He hated cops and had no problem encouraging violence against them. Here are some of his tweets. First one. Look, I know I'm beating my own dead horse here, but from seeing comrades throw things back at cops tonight, leftists absolutely need to get into sports, if for no other reason so they can throw something without hitting their comrades. Comrade. He had a couple of Twitter accounts. This one he calls himself Art School Jock. You're so cute. So kawaii, Ryan. No, I'm not saying nice things about the dead. Deal with it. Here's the next one. Hi, political organizer here. It's not bullying to hold elected officials accountable. That being said, I would love to shove this little fucking nerd in the locker where he belongs. He also liked to gloat about the death of conservatives. Here he is reacting to the death of Rush Limbaugh. LMAO, hell yeah. LMAO. Ryan Carson wasn't kind, was he? No. He was a nasty son of a bitch. Nice people aren't actually nice. Nice people are not nice. They're vicious. And to top it all off, his lazy, Marxist, parasite friends are collecting money off his death for themselves. Here's their GoFundMe. Hi, everyone. We are a collective of Ryan's close friends reeling from a brutal loss. We are asking for your help on behalf of his partner in easing the burden and stress of this horrifying situation so that we can have space and time to grieve and remember Ryan. Immediate needs are to offset the costs of working class people taking time off work to properly mourn. They couldn't stop. They couldn't stop their Marxist bullshit, even in death. Pay us. Don't pay his family. Don't pay his mom and dad. Don't pay for his funeral. Don't even pay his girlfriend directly. Pay us, his friends, so that we can take time off to mourn properly like those bourgeoisie do. You disgusting, parasitic pigs. You know which other white social justice activist this week seems not very nice to me? The other one who got killed this week, allegedly by another 18-year-old black man who shot him you know what? I'm gonna put a caution asterisk on that. I believe that I saw that they found a suspect, but I might be wrong. So I'm going to retract that right now. We'll bring you the full story next week when I can get my facts in order. This stuff is moving quickly. Another social justice activist got killed this week, shot to death in his own home. His name was Josh Kruger. He was in Philadelphia. Here he is. Here he is with his cat. Take a look at his facial expression. No, this is not the only picture that displays his facial expression. I'm not plucking one out of context. Want another? Here it is. What does that face tell you? What do you think of when you see that? You know what that is? That's a Joan Crawford expression. It's a challenging, domineering expression. And I saw it in almost all of the photographs I've seen of him, including the ones he chose for his own profiles. Take a look at this one. The eyes have it. I'll read to you from coverage from Philadelphia's ABC News affiliate. The victim of a homicide in Philadelphia has been identified as a local journalist and community activist. Josh Kruger, 39, was shot 7 times in his own home in the 2300 block of Watkins Street in the Point Breeze section around 1:30 a.m. Monday. He died at Penn Presbyterian Hospital about 45 minutes later. There was no word on motive for the shooting. No arrests have been made. Sources confirmed to Action News there were no signs of forced entry. The home does have cameras, but it's unclear if they captured any images of the shooter. Friends say he had recently posted online about threats, including an incident where he filed a police report after his home was vandalized in late August. Kendall Stevens, a black trans activist, says Kruger helped her after she was violently attacked in 2020. She wants answers about her friend. Quote, "He was more than just a journalist. He was more than just a community member. He was somebody who fought the great fight," Stevens said. "So many of us aren't able to fight that fight," end quote. District Attorney Larry Krasner said in a statement that Kruger was an, quote, "openly queer writer who wrote about his own journey surviving substance use disorder and homelessness." Mr. Krasner, don't you mean unhousedness? Don't you mean a man of homeless experience? You're going to see when we give you some quotes here, Josh Kruger didn't like Mr. Krasner, not one bit. Like Ryan Carson, Josh Kruger also didn't like reality. He didn't like conservatives, and like our Seattle friend, he liked rolling around in the social decay and mocking people who didn't want to get down in the pig wallow with him. Here are some of his tweets. "Some idiot just said you're more likely to get shot and killed than die of COVID in Philly to make some insensitive rhetorical point for, quote, his side. Folks, 4 times as many Philadelphians have died of COVID than gunshots this year. I understand that math is hard, but do better. Do better." I think we're all doing just fine, aren't we? I don't believe that either. All those people didn't die of COVID. Not when we know that people who literally walked in front of a bus and got struck by it were coded as a COVID death. Come on. Next tweet. "Look, it's that lawless land of liberals in Philly where shootings are, ... dropping to levels not seen in years." I'm sorry, I shouldn't over-egg this with it. It's so hard to take these people seriously. Here's another one. Kruger says, "Now that I'm no longer in government, I can finally say publicly it's not wrong to punch Nazis." You get the picture. Smug, reality denying, morally superior to everyone else. Look at the good I do. Cops are bad. Conservatives are bad. People who notice crimes are bad. And social media has been nothing but strangers wailing and gnashing their teeth about how devastated and sad they are about these deaths, how deeply they feel for these men, even though they don't agree with them. What ghouls the rest of us are for suggesting that it is in fact the way of the world, that people will face the consequences of the choices that they make. Strangers aren't actually heartbroken. Strangers aren't devastated. That's not how humans work psychologically. It's not real. It's never been real. We don't feel for strangers in distant lands the way we feel for our own and our closest, the way that we claim we do. This is a modern lie that is made possible only by modern life and digital technology. I'm not happy that these people have been murdered, but I'm not broken up over it either. The harsh truth is that the people who are working to degrade our society are never going to stop degrading our society until they get hurt for their actions. Not us, them. We, the rest of society, we have been paying the price for their activism. Why should they not pay the price? Why is it mean to say that? Why is it outrageous and awful to suggest that they are facing consequences that they asked for? And it is better that they face them than people like me or people like you and your family who didn't ask for those consequences? Why is it okay that we pay the price with our crumbling law enforcement, our cities that are going to hell, our children who are being abused and indoctrinated at school, but when we suggest that it is more proper for them to face the consequences, we get called sociopaths? No. No. I don't feel glee for their deaths. I feel nothing. Good night.